everyone and welcome back to Mariana Math Books. My name is Mariana and today I am here with my wrap-up for the octofinals of the BOOKTUBE Prize. I was part of Group E in the non-fiction division. So before I start with the wrap-up, a little live update. I will of course leave timestamps in the description so you can jump straight to the wrap-up if you don't want to hear me blabbing about my life in the past weeks. So you may or may have not noticed that I hadn't been uploading in 2 or 3 weeks, which is funny because in terms of life 2 or 3 weeks is nothing, but in terms of the internet it feels like centuries. So it feels like centuries that I haven't uploaded, and I haven't uploaded because just in general this hasn't been the best year ever in terms of health and things, but especially these past weeks haven't been the best ever. I actually filmed a video that I haven't uploaded, but if you recall, I had been having a great reading year, January and February, and March was not the case. As I said, I've been having some health things, physical health related things, mental health related things. I went back to therapy. I've been having some symptoms of things. I'm not going to go into detail, but it just hasn't been the best year. February was a great reading month for me, and the 3 books that I read for the BOOKTUBE Prize were, I loved them all 3. I was very excited about the BOOKTUBE Prize, and then March happened, and it wasn't the best month, but also I left the books that I was less interested in for March, which looking back maybe wasn't the best strategy. And so that combined with the fact that I wasn't feeling well just in general, I wasn't super thrilled with my BOOKTUBE Prize reading for this month. So I read 3 that I really liked, and then 3 that it's not that I didn't like them, I just didn't care for them and I wasn't feeling well. And then to top it all off, the cherry on top of the cake was that I had a medical emergency type thing the week that the results, or that we were supposed to send our results. I think I've told you before that I eat through a feeding tube because of health reasons, and the week that I was supposed to send my results for the BOOKTUBE Prize, my feeding tube fell off, which wasn't great. So yeah, there was that. So I missed the deadline to send my results in, and so I got the email that said, "We're waiting for your results. The deadline has come and gone, and where are your results?" And I was so embarrassed, and I had to send my results via email, and Robert, who is the creator of the BOOKTUBE Prize, had to manually add my results. And I say me, I don't know, maybe other people also missed the deadline, I don't know, but I feel like it was me, that I was the one that made everything go behind. I don't know. I was embarrassed. I was angry at myself and at life because I couldn't believe that my feeding tube fell off. I had to get a provisional one that week, and now I have one that I don't love, and so I am waiting for insurance papers to come through so that I can get another one, the one that I like and I feel comfortable with. So I am permanently hungry because the feeding tube that I currently have doesn't allow me to eat properly. And so I am not in the mood for filming. I am not in the mood for reading, and I haven't been having the best week. So that's why this is going to be such a crappy wrap up. And here's why I'm filming it, because you're probably thinking like, well, you don't have to film if you're not in the mood for filming. But I don't want to get my wrap up uploaded, and I was very excited about the BOOKTUBE prize. I mean, it's not the BOOKTUBE prize's fault that my March was so crappy, and I don't want to leave everything hanging just because, you know. And yeah, I could wait until I was feeling better, but this is one of those videos that you kind of have to upload at the proper time, because quarterfinals are starting, and if I take too long, then it would be closer to the end of the quarterfinals than the octafinals, and so there wouldn't be a point in filming the video. And I really do want to film it because I read the books, and I'm like, I want to do the whole thing. So anyway, I'm here, and yeah, so what I'm thinking is this. I am not going to talk extensively about all of the books because I don't have a ton to say about all of them, and because my brain doesn't feel up to forming coherent thoughts about 6 serious books for a serious event. So here's what I'm going to do. I already saw the results, obviously, of what books went through to the next round, and I have feelings. Of the 6 books that I read, I mean, 3 books make it through, that's how the round works, and of the 3 books that made it through, I was surprised about 1 book that did make it through, I was surprised about 1 book that didn't make it through, and I was not surprised about 1 book that made it through, but I'm still mad that it made it through anyway. So I thought, okay, I'm going to talk about those 3 books. So the 6 books that were up in my group for the nonfiction group E were A Ghost in the Throat by Doireann Ghríofa. Ghríofa, I think. The next one is The Sinner and the Saint, Dostoevsky and the Gentleman Murderer Who Inspired a Masterpiece by Kevin Birmingham. The next one was Facing the Mountain, A True Story of Japanese-American Heroes in World War II by Daniel James Brown. The next one was The Code Breaker, Jennifer Doudna, Gene Editing and the Future of the Human Race by Walter Isaacson. Beloved Beasts by Fighting for Life in an Age of Extinction by Nijhuis. And the Doctors Blackwell, How 2 Pioneering Sisters Brought Medicine to Women and Women to Medicine by Janice P. Nimura. So those were the 6 books. I ranked them as follows. In number 1, I put A Ghost in the Throat, which was my favorite read of the BOOKTUBE prize, my favorite read of February, and it will probably be one of my favorite reads of the year. I absolutely loved that book. Number 2 was The Code Breaker by Walter Isaacson, which did not make it through. Then The Doctors Blackwell by Janice P. Nimura, which did. Then Beloved Beasts by Nijhuis, which I think didn't make it through. Then The Sinner and the Saint by Kevin Birmingham, which didn't make it through. And finally, Facing the Mountain by Daniel James Brown, which did make it through. My favorite one was A Ghost in the Throat, which is a memoir. It's a memoir about, it's hard to explain. It's like Fathoms by Rebecca Giggs. I mean, it has nothing to do with it in terms of the theme, but it's kind of like that book where it's hard to explain what it's about. But it's a memoir about femininity, womanhood, motherhood, our relationship to literature, our relationship to people that have lived in generations past, and all of that combined. And it is beautifully written. It is, I wrote how I wanted to describe it. I wrote, it is poetic, it is experimental, it is philosophical, it is both intellectual and spiritual, and literary in theme. So, in summary, it is my jam. It also made me right where I'm at, because I'm currently very into exploring spirituality. And not that this book is explicitly spiritual, it never mentions spirituality or religion in any way, so if you're not a spiritual person, don't be deterred from reading it. But just the way that the author talks about her connection to women in the past, or women through the generations, it feels very spiritual, and I feel that I feel it's spiritual because that's the lens I'm looking it through. But if you're not spiritual, then maybe you won't feel it like that. During Ghríofa, the author, is she feels this strong connection to an ancient Irish poet, which I will insert the name here. And so all throughout the book, she is relating her journey of translating one of her most famous poems, while at the same time kind of searching for her in the past, investigating her life, and paralleling that with her personal life. So that's the structure kind of the book. And we have sections where we can read the parts of the poem, or rather, parts of the poem that she's translating in Gaelic, and in the end you get the poem in Gaelic and in English, the full poem per her translation. So it's, as I said, it's spiritual, it's poetic, it's philosophical, it's literary, and it's very much of women. There's this recurring theme and this recurring sentence of "this is a female text" that goes all through the book, and it's kind of like a thread through the book, and it's just beautiful. I could read 1,000 quotes. I'm just going to read one because it's one of those quotes where in a single sentence you can get a feel for the theme of the book, for the writing style, for the just in general. I think in that sentence you can get a feel for the book. And the sentence says, "I want you to know she was a female being. I want you to know that she was a female being. I want you to know she was." I just thought it was such a beautiful sentence. Anyway, so that was my favorite read of the BOOKTUBE Prize octofinals, and that was the one that I was surprised made it through, because just noticing the pattern of the books that made it through to the long list, the ones that I voted for that didn't make it through, and the ones that did end up making it through, I sensed a very heavy leaning towards more nature or scientific or social justice type books, and the books that didn't make it through were all the ones that were relating to art and literature and that type of book. And because this is such a hard book to define, it's not, I mean, it's clearly non-fiction, but it's one of those that I feel it's like verging on the line, because there's a lot of speculation going on. There's tons of passages where the author speculates about the life of the poet that she's researching, and she will describe entire scenes like, her little boy fell down and she picked him up in her arms, and things that she's thinking, okay, these are things that happen between sons and mothers, but it's not that we know for a fact that that happened, right? So it's kind of like verging in the line, and it's so poetic and so philosophical that I didn't think it would make it through. It's again kind of like Phantoms by Rebecca Giggs, which also mixes the topic with the life of the author with very philosophical concepts, and I think it's a book that is very polarizing. You either love it or you don't. So I didn't think that this was, in fact I was sure it wasn't going to make it through. So this was my surprise of the one that did make it through to the next round. Then the one that I was surprised didn't make it through was The Code Breaker, Jennifer Doudna, Gene Editing and the Future of the Human Race by Walter Isaacson. And I was sure this was going to make it through because Walter Isaacson is a very popular biographer. He has written the biography on Steve Jobs, a biography of Leonardo da Vinci, and just in general his biographies tend to be very popular, and I thought this book was very relevant for the moment. It was very, you can say, feminist focused because it's about a female scientist that has done very revolutionary discoveries in biology and genetics. And it is super well written. It's super Walter Isaacson writes in a way that's very easy to follow. It's very engaging. It has short chapters, so you don't feel like it drags, which sometimes happens with nonfiction. It's a very commercial book. It's a very book club type book. If you have a book club, this would be a great book to read. And so because of that, I was sure it was going to make it through. The one thing I'm going to say why maybe it didn't is because it's very COVID heavy. I will say, I mean, I put it in my number 2, but I will say it gave me COVID anxiety. Because she's a geneticist and a biologist, and she works with RNA, yes. She was very involved in the research for COVID since the very beginning, and for everything COVID related. So maybe that's why people didn't respond to it. Maybe everyone who read it had the same reaction as me and got COVID anxiety, and so they were like, yeah, no. I think the other COVID book that was in the long list also didn't make it through. I'm pretty sure, I'm thinking. So yeah, maybe people were like, yeah, no, I'm not feeling the pandemic at the moment for reading. So maybe that's why it didn't make it through. But it's really, really good. If you're interested in the topic, I do recommend it. And I am looking forward to reading more from Walter Isaacson. I've had his Leonardo da Vinci biography on my wish list for a long time. And after reading this one, I want to read it even more because he is such a compelling writer. And as I said, it's easy to read. If you're intimidated by biographies, by all means, check his work out because it's a super easy read. Finally, the book I wasn't surprised that made it through, but I was mad that I did anyway, was Facing the Mountain, a true story of Japanese American heroes in World War II by Daniel James Brown. This was the book I was least looking forward to, not only because I don't have really an interest in military history or reading about World War II or World War I or whatever war or battles or generals or anything related to military. Not that interested, but also because I'm going to struggle talking about this book without being too controversial, because BookTube is my happy place and I want to keep it my happy place, but it's hard to talk about, so I'll have a go. The title alone felt very American, and when I say American, I mean like America, USA, that type of, yeah. A true story of Japanese American heroes in World War II. So the US has this relationship to war that is very idealistic, is very worshipy, that I don't understand. Just as a rule, I'm against war. Just as a rule. So I don't understand this worshipy thing that people from the US, I'm not just not everyone, I know not everyone, but a lot of people from the US tend to show towards war and war heroes and yeah, this hero narrative. And so that had me like, I don't know, but also the fact that it was Japanese American heroes. And so my concern going into this book was, is there going to be a line drawn between Japanese American soldiers and Japanese soldiers? And there's a very clear line drawn between them. And just from the get-go, I'm just not on board with that. When it comes to soldiers in war, I don't think they are heroes and I don't think they are villains. I think they are all victims of the people in power who send them to fight their battles for stupid reasons. There are literally no good reasons to go to war. Okay, they are all stupid reasons, and that you can't change my mind about it. And so this narrative was like, I'm not sure. I started reading the book. I was hesitant. I was like, okay, let's give it the benefit of the doubt. And just from the prologue, I confirmed all my suspicions. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is going to be super America, USA heavy. And yeah, I'm not going to read, I have quotes, but I'm not going to read all of the quotes. But just the way the author writes is very, this is a book about what it means to be a true American. You know? So I was hesitant from the prologue, and then, as I said, there's a very clear difference made between the Japanese American soldiers and the Japanese soldiers. There's a very clear narrative between who the heroes were and who the villains were. And I don't know if I don't think it was purposefully done by the author. I think what he's trying to do is commendable in the sense of he is trying to clean the reputation of these soldiers who were they were rejected because of being Japanese when they were in fact Japanese American. And I use air quotes because that's my whole issue with the book, that I don't like the fact that we are okay with judging Japanese soldiers because they're Japanese, but whoa, don't judge this group of soldiers that I'm talking about because they weren't Japanese, they were Japanese American. And so they were heroes. The Japanese soldiers, yeah, no, you can totally judge them. But this group of soldiers I'm talking about, they were Japanese American. So they are heroes. And that was my whole problem with the book. So yeah, I didn't like this book just because of that. And that's why I put it last. And that's also why I wasn't surprised that I made it through, because the whole BOOKTUBE prize is very US centric and US heavy, which I am not criticizing, I'm not judging, and I understand. It is an event organized in the US. If there was a prize organized in Mexico, it would probably have a very Mexico-centric view. So I am not judging it because of that. What I'm saying is, it didn't surprise me that this book made it through because it has a very US-centric theme, and the majority of the books that made it through are very US-centric. So yes, those are my thoughts with the book. And I'm just going to go quickly over the other books. I know I said I wasn't going to talk about them, but since I'm here, I'm just going to quickly go over them. So, the one that didn't surprise me, that didn't make it through, was The Sinner and the Saint, because this was about Dostoevsky and when he wrote Crime and Punishment. And if you haven't read Crime and Punishment, then you don't necessarily have an interest in this book. I hadn't read Crime and Punishment, so I read it last month. I should correct this. I read it and I DNF'd it, so I didn't finish reading it because it wasn't for me. Me and nihilism don't jive well. I despise nihilism with every fiber of my being. I have no patience for nihilism. I don't like it. I don't like watching it. I don't like reading about it. And, the main character in Crime and Punishment is basically nihilism personified. So I don't care for that. So I was like, yeah, I read 40%. I was like, okay, I think I can get a grasp on Dostoevsky's type of writing, on the story. I'm just going to look for a summary to know how it ends so I can read The Sinner and Saint. And it was a good book, well researched. I don't have anything to say about it, because if this had been a book about, if this same book, same structure, same writer, same exact formula, but it was about Tolkien writing The Lord of the Rings, I would have absolutely loved the book. But it was about Dostoevsky writing Crime and Punishment, and while it was an excellent book, I didn't care for the topic. So it was very interesting. I prefer reading this to Facing the Mountain, because just anything literary I like, but I didn't have any particular attachment to it. And then finally the other one, oh no, okay, I have two more. Beloved Beasts, Fighting for Life in an Age of Extinction. This wasn't what I thought it was going to be, which, looking back and looking at the subtitle, I'm like, yeah, the subtitle told you what it was going to be, but for some reason I thought it was going to be more philosophical, like fighting for life in a philosophical sense. But it was the history of conservation. It was very interesting. It was very well written, but it followed a very A to B to C type of narrative, very linear chronology. I prefer non-fiction books that jump around and that make connections and that have a more interesting narrative structure. But yeah, you get a lot of fun facts about animals and about conservation, movement, etc. It's one of those books where when you end, you're like, okay, yeah, the planet Earth would definitely be better off without humans in it. But it was a very good book. And then finally, the Doctors Blackwell, which was about, as the subtitle suggests, how two pioneering sisters brought medicine to women and women to medicine. So it was about, and I put this in my number 3 because I loved it, and now I am forgetting the name of the first woman doctor ever, which is one of the Blackwell sisters. But I don't remember her name. I remember the name of her sister Anne, and I don't remember her particular name. I'm going to put it in the screen. I'm telling you guys, my brain is not, it's not here. I love this book. And this is one I talked about in my February wrap-up, and I said that I really liked it because I thought it was going to be about one thing, but it was also about another thing, and I was really enjoying spending time with the people in the book, and it was this book. I thought it was going to be about the history of the first woman doctor and the first hospital run by the two Blackwell sisters, which was devoted to women. So it was the first hospital that brought, as the subtitle says, women to medicine and medicine to women. And of course it was about that, but there was a very heavy focus on the family, on the Blackwell family, and I absolutely love the family. I mean, of course, this is the 1800s, right? So of course there are questionable ideas and philosophies about life, and despite the fact that they were the first women doctors, they weren't necessarily feminist. They were very misogynistic in their way of speaking, but the family relationship, the family dynamics, there were things that reminded me of the March family from Little Women, because they were all very intellectual, and they loved to read and they loved to write, so they wrote plays and poems and stuff, and they would make like anthologies of what they wrote as a family, and they were all very close, and the brothers were always very close with the sisters, and I loved them as a family, and so I really loved spending time with them, in the book. And so that part I really, really loved about the book, and I wasn't surprised I made it through. And yeah, so those were the books I read for the BookTube Prize. I guess I did have some things to say. As always, I say it's going to be short, and then it's not. But I'm going to leave it at that. The next video I upload, it's going to be a fun tag that I filmed, I tell you, weeks ago, and I haven't uploaded it yet, so I'm going to upload that one next. And then I don't know, we'll see where the wind takes me, because as I said, I'm not particularly feeling the best, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, you have this video, and then you're going to have a fun tag, and then we'll see where the wind takes me. I'll upload another bookish video on another time. Please let me know what you thought about these books, if you read them, or if you participated in the BookTube Prize, if you read different books, just in general, let me know anything down in the comments. I have been having fun watching other people's videos. If I usually comment on your videos and I haven't commented in a while, it is because I have been MIA from BookTube, just in general, from filming and from watching and from commenting and from everything, because my life has been a mess. So that's why I haven't commented on your videos if I usually comment. So I'm sorry, I'm very behind on my BookTube watching, but I will resume it at some point. I hope you enjoyed this video, and in the meantime, I wish you happy reading.